Hey everybody, good morning. Actually didn't start my local recording. Been a couple days. Hope you all are having a good start to your December. I know I didn't stream the start of this week. Did a show with Marty, which I think just dropped yesterday. Lots to cover, always. Finally getting a handle on a better database, though. So I'll be able to bring you even more and better charts, a lot of economic charts, which I've been wanting to do for a long, long time, harmonized with the Bitcoin data. But let's look at where we are. I know that people get worried, right? How far can we drop? Pulled in the data here at 93.2. My curve is 122. All right. So we're quite a bit down from the trend. Let's see exactly if we looked at the multiples over or under the OLS, historically where we would be. All right now about the median, which means about 0.8x the trend. 0.8x, 20% discount. So interestingly, right now, based on this recovery that we've had, in terms of dollars, we're right at the median. Half the observations above where we are, half the observations below, okay? But this is relative to what the price usually is, compared to the trend, okay? So it kind of evolves. The trend is more like the 5 than it is the all-time smooth line when you're back in these days, okay? And I just want to get a feel for where the current price action sits, because I know a lot of people get worried. Anything, of course, can happen, but let's just look statistically where we've been. Relative to the trend, we're, of course, below it, 20%, but we're at the median. So 20% down from the trend line, or below the trend, the OLS, ordinary least squares, is indeed a 50 percentile event. So 50% of the time the price is below this, 50% above. All right. As I said on Marty's show, I envision talking to you all right now about just tracking how many days would be above this. Because I envision that we would be above it, but we're not. And that's all right. I've shown this line a lot as well over the last cycle. Is the 40th percentile, which at the moment is 78K. All right, we've gotten close to that intraday for sure, but even on closes, still above it. All right, so how much of a support that's actually going to turn out to be, we're going to find out. All right, by year end, as you all should know by now, the OLS, the trend is going to be 125. All right, 1 month from now. 2x that, which has happened 10% of the time, is 250K. All right. Now, 10% is obviously a pretty small minority, but we've done it every cycle, even if not with huge peaks. Now, I know we can get to more fancy analysis, regression, quantiles, decaying, exponential, all sorts of things that can show us that these trend lines sort of converge over the long term, and I'm not doing that, right? I know that. But I just want to show you for simplicity where we've been, because still, if the thing hasn't been fully invalidated, why think too hard about it? That's been my strategy. Good morning, Logie. Now, I do have a quantile on gold here, okay, which is a little bit different than the multiples. And Bitcoin Gold is super cheap, as cheap as it's ever been. All right, back in the day here, 2012, and I really should have more precision than 2 decimal points, but you can see we're below this 10 percentile at 0.01 ounces. Now, and I'm putting this on log bottom just to show you how powerful this curve is. Getting to where we are right now is so rare. I know this is a bad log straight line on log scale, but all right, we had it here in 2022, 9 ounces, and now even at a higher price in gold terms, 20 ounces, 21 ounces, right? 22 ounces is where we are today. It's lower proportionally, or as a percentile, than it's ever been. All right, so let's take log bottom off. It's too complicated for my charting engine at the moment. Let's look at it this way. It's the same chart. But again, this period was so low that it was below the 10th percentile on a quantile regression. Not at the 0. Now we're at basically the 0, but we've bounced off it. Okay, I mean, we're setting new lows right now as far as Bitcoin in terms of gold. And yet, the price is still double what it was 3 years ago. So that's something really to think hard about. Doesn't mean we can't set new lows still and go down, down, down to, to wherever. But we're at the basement. I mean, we're literally at the basement. Right, yeah, I need to reset this actually. My windows always get a little bit weird when I go log. Sorry, very slowly drawing here. Well, let's go back to 2012. Again, it's numbers aren't going to make much sense in the tooltip. Right. 0.03 is the OLS, and we were kissing 0.01 ounces and change. All right, so it's a long time ago and a much smaller price. And now every day we're setting new lows. Okay, as far as Bitcoin in terms of gold. This is, to me, one of the most interesting phenomena in the Bitcoin world right now is how cheap it can actually get in terms of gold ounces. Because when the Bitcoin market was way out of favor, right? The last round of DeFi scams were coming to light, and CeFi scams. We were at 10 ounces of gold. Now we're at 20, but percentile wise, it's a lower, right? It's a lower level. I just have a hard time seeing this. It's like a governor, right? You have two different levers. Of course, we have the dollar price, but gold is also a store of value. And gold is just ripping 40% per year over the last 2 years on a trend. How much longer is this going to go? And how cheap are we going to let gold bugs turn some of their gold into Bitcoin? That's the very interesting question at the moment. Good morning, Kurt. Yeah, possibly. I mean, everybody in the East for sure buys and appreciates gold, I think, more than the West, India, China. But as I've shown a few times, it's not, let me see if this pulls up correctly. Yeah, this is still only through March. There's probably one more month of data that I could get. It's kind of slow, this data that comes out. But if we say that the Eastern world is what buys, right? So I got Japan, Switzerland, that's China in yellow. You can barely read it. So I got the IMF, United States, and Europe. It is buying, but this percentage is, 1% a year. They haven't done these big jumps like they did here and here. Ounces in world dollars. So, with this price, this is now over $4 trillion. $4 trillion is in central bank coffers. But I still don't see, in Russia, by the way, it's like the only reserve that they have. I know prices are made on the margin, but this is a 1.5% trajectory over the last 15 years. It's not, if you looked at the actual ounces, not this. Of course, price is more. But the growth of this is 1.5% per year. Okay, it's higher for these guys. 1.5% is the blended rate, right? With everybody. But even still. All right, so 200 million ounces. 300 million ounces, whatever. 330 million ounces. You could do that PVFV over 17 years. It's not, to me, it doesn't justify 40% increase in price of gold per year, which is what it's doing. But anyway, the consequence is cheaper Bitcoin. Historically cheap. I don't know. How much longer do you guys think this will go? And do you think it'll even go price-wise as low as here? This is an amazing chart to me. Look at fees. So as price goes down, fees go down if you just value them in daily value. Right? Still haven't hit the high of here, which is 100 million a day. Now we're doing 39 million a day, down from the summer highs of 50, 60. All right, so again, super low levels relative to this cycle. Let's look at the 30-day. 30 days will give us a little bit more of topping indicators, I think. Again, down. 2 billion as of the halving. 2 billion for miners a month. Now it's 1.2. Growing, I mean, it still looks like a secular bull to me. Doesn't look like, I mean, if we assume that blow-off tops cause secular bears, which I'm not sure if that's the correct assumption or not, you know, you guys tell me. I haven't seen a blow-off top in this chart to signal a secular bear. I mean, unless you count this, but we've gone up in price since then. So it's Plan C was saying Mr. Market's done its job over the last couple months to freak everybody out, clean the market. I tend to agree with something like that. And I have to admit, this chart, if we now extend the 30 days to annual, right? This chart shows me that we haven't topped at all. I mean, and also this is in my opinion, one of the best charts to show that there is no more cycles really. We're doing something different, right? Because this is not a topping indicator, but it shows you for sure, like, okay, we've gone down. Trailing 12 months, way down. We got up August 2018 to 6.5 billion for miners, basically 7 billion. Then 17 billion. And now we're at 17 billion, but I mean, okay, it's flattened out a little bit, but it's clearly growing. You see the destruction of the halving to miner revenue. It's pretty wild. But if you had to, you know, force me to say what I see from this chart, I see it's still going up. And by the way, the halving cut it down here too, right? You can see the halving always does its job. It's very hard for me to think that this is just like the top for this cycle or this, you know, this just doesn't look like a cycle. It means that it looks like a secular bull. We can show you here, same figures. All right, remember, I think these are just wild numbers to look at. So oil is obviously just a huge market, different beast. Trillions of dollars a year. But the gold bugs are just loving life. Getting to 400 billion. And there's our Bitcoin mining revenue. Still 17 billion. It doesn't seem, it's the same chart. On an annualized basis, it doesn't seem like top heavy. It seems like it's just growing steadily. It's got a lot of work to do to catch gold. And if it ever catches oil, everybody's watching this channel will be in the Mediterranean on a yacht. This shows you how early we are, right? It's going to be a good Christmas for the gold bugs. Thank you, Satoto, for the repost. It is true. Well, actually, I got to pull up the gold chart, don't I? Like some people are making the argument that gold is just sort of catching up to where it should be. The crypto space was stealing a lot of interest and revenue from gold for a long time. Look at this. Look at this one. So the trend line lifetime from whenever gold started to free float was 5.2%. That's not, that's just what it is. You can't count here as your present value and here as your future value and say that's what gold does, because barely anybody alive today has that return. You got to measure the slope of this line, the trend line, right? It's 5.2% per year. But this is like something no one's ever seen, right? So this is your CAGR if you bought at that time. So if you bought only in, say, April 2023, held till today, you're running a 33.9% CAGR. Right? It's going to go down as time goes back. But this is just like way outside the norm. It's way outside the this thing would recalculate. It's not a. It's kind of weird to parse your mind around it, but it's. If you'd bought at Brown's bottom, Gordon Brown sold a lot of Britain's gold, not all of it, but most of it, and held till today, you would have had 11.6% CAGR. So, not bad. But the further back you go, the harder it is to make up from that. Like if you bought the peak here in 1980, any of these prices, you'd be running a 4% CAGR. Bottom line is, this is just clearly wilder than we've ever experienced for gold. So people are trying to ask, like, is this temporary or is this a permanent structural change? Yeah, I haven't. I watch him on clips only. I don't listen to him anymore. Good on the old economics stuff, but he's so bad in Bitcoin. And so many people have been burned by him. But I'm sure, yeah, I'm sure he's just loving this and thinking like somehow he was right all along, even though still his returns wouldn't hold a candle to Bitcoin's over this period. And I've shown you guys this before, right? Like there's just no structural way that you can. Maybe this could go up for another year, double again. Maybe it goes to 12K. Totally possible. But when you start to get up to like 20, 30, 40K gold, like supply and demand doesn't seem like it's going to hold. A lot of a lot of gold projects are more profitable right now than they ever were. Are those projects really going to work out? Going to have to see. But usually, as I've said, the cure for high prices is higher prices. If you're a buyer, if you're a consumer of gold, just wait. There's going to be enough people coming in to compete, open up old mines, a lot of jokers, and eventually the price is going to come back down. And Bitcoin, with its number go up technology, does not have that constraint. So That's why to me this is still the most interesting chart right now. You know, is Peter Schiff going to get 1 ounce of gold per Bitcoin? Then it would be some structural change. But um, the numbers certainly don't paint that picture. The numbers are asking, you know, when is this going to flip? There's precedent for where we are, right? There's precedent, but it's, yeah, doesn't get much lower than this. And we bounced. Two ounces off the all-time low, you could say, all-time relative low. Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. It's a good question. I'm not saying it's not China at all, right? But it's I'm just saying that uh, their buying can't really account for all of it. Sorry, this is a terrible yellow to use here, but you know, they're buying. Just on the margin, this is not anything that would seem to make 40% CAGRs. It's definitely a factor. That's a terrible yellow. I'm sorry. Switzerland has done nothing since the crisis. Russia has bought, but this is probably even some fake gold. I've heard they've had to lever this up from their disastrous war. IMF even down. United States, who knows if this even exists, but assuming it does, flat. And Euro area flat, slightly down even. India, you can see how much smaller it is compared to Europe. Japan up. Not much though, actually. Take away India, it's. And rest of world up. But the point is, as I've said, if you go back to 15 years, like this was a low. This was a historical low. I think it was March or April, where everybody thought, okay, well, maybe we should have some gold. And it's still not, like an overwhelming CAGR. 1 to 1.5% per year. So what's the rest? Boomers? I don't know, some just general revaluation amidst all this crazy geopolitical stuff? Maybe. But, everybody in Wall Street knows the power curve. Like, they have to be looking at this. People have to be understanding this is like super cheap. Maybe they're not looking at it exactly this way with the quantile regression. Maybe they only see this and think, it could go way lower. This is interesting. So even a really fluffy, super clear peak bubble from 2017 is cheaper than now. Bitcoin is still more valuable at 22 ounces than it was here. It's 96% R squared. very curious how much longer this can go. Show you another one on fees. Again, nothing bubblish. Nothing bubblish about this. 99% of the revenue miners get every day is the block reward. And that doesn't signify a bubble. I mean, it can signify maybe like a bottom, but it's not really a bottom caller. It is a top caller. Right? When you get more white on this chart, that's a top caller, but it's not doing that. So certainly, it wasn't even a top here. I know the network changes, and we have lightning, and we have other L2s, L3s, but this was the worst day or best day for miners in terms of fees on the halving. Actually, that's not the value. I think it's even. There it is. 75% of the revenue was from fees on this day. Day of the halving. Pretty wild, huh? What do you guys think? Is there a are the cycles over? I feel like I'm the only person that has not declared the cycle's dead yet. If you look at, say, this top, right? You can see the action. And it's funny, this is the real top. Like you can see this with other metrics. This was the scam top, or a hell of a dead cat bounce. And then this is just different behavior. This is ordinals. BRC20 started here, here, here. Inscriptions. Everybody wanted to make a special block for their, pay a lot of fees for their inscribed coins, but that's not happening right now. Just business as usual. Yeah, I'm sympathetic. I'm sympathetic to this view for sure. It could be just more hope that we pump it. But as I've said, I'm not going to declare it until it's a wimpy prediction, but we got one more month to go. Let's at least see what happens, right? The fact that everybody's so bearish tells me the herd's wrong. Where's 65K, by the way? 65K is... It is number 3. Which is a level, at least on this chart, which is not the only way to look at it, but on this chart, that's a 50% discount from the OLS. Would be your number, Kurt. didn't actually run the. I don't have quantile today for dollar Bitcoin. I have it for gold Bitcoin, but not for dollar Bitcoin. But this is still an interesting way to look at it, in my opinion. From about here, the power curve starts to make a lot of sense. It starts to look very much like the prediction. So yeah, there's your 65K. I'll show you the money supply. Been a bit slow this quarter. I'm hoping to get it updated every month from next year. But, still low, slightly negative growth. There's a little bit more to update here, but, you know, we were at 30 trillion during the crazy period. Now we're down to 26 and change. And remember, some of this is dollar devaluation, dollar loss in purchasing power against the dollar for these currencies. Some of it is they've actually shrunk their money supplies too. It's a mix. But presumably, by next quarter, we'll see a significant bump here because of not necessarily significant, but the Fed is going to explicitly start buying again. Now, I guess I don't even know if it's shown through the data. Let's see if it shows through the data from what I have. Not sure this will update, but sorry. Yeah, this is still month end, but so they fell by 30 billion, a measly 30 billion last month, and this will go up next month. This blue line was the line that Peter Schiff learned economics from, Larry Summers, Joseph Stiglitz. I don't know, pick your economist. Doesn't matter the school, Nouriel Rubini. Everybody was thinking that this was all that the Fed needed to do was raise its balance sheet by 6.7% per year. Obviously, that completely changed. And by the way, maybe it could have stayed the same had they not bailed everybody out, but that's not what they decided to do. Interesting, it was even sort of falling below, actually. Trended from 2006. Anyway, this trend, I don't think remember how they always say they're going to normalize the balance sheet? Like, this is normal. A $3 trillion balance sheet would be normal. They're double that, more than. And if you look at the trend that they're on, they are actually under the 2008 trend, but that's a blow off trend anyway. All right. I showed this one on Marty's show as well. Everything's relative, right? People say the debt is insane, and it is insane at 38 trillion, 38.3, but the Fed owns a relatively small amount of it. Relatively, 16%. That's the lowest it's been, since just before our crazy days, right? Which they also did have a repo spike, fascinatingly, right there. All things considered, it's a low. It's not pre GFC levels, but only 16% of the balance sheet is 16% of the U.S. federal debt being held by the Fed is actually quite low, which just tells me that if they run into problems, and of course Trump's bringing in his new dovish Fed chair, and presidents always get the Fed chair that they want, you and I both know what's going to happen to this number. It's going to go up. I've talked about this a lot as well. I'll have these relationships soon in chart form, but remember, if you think about Bitcoin, Bitcoin peaked here after QE here, actually. So it was going up. Even the Fed money printing relative to the debt was going up. Bitcoin peaked here. But then here, as it was going down, and they weren't printing money at all. This is the definition of printing money, by the way, is basically this. This is the asset side of the balance sheet. The liability side is actually the definition of printing money, but 6-1 at this point. So Bitcoin was booming, and the Fed was not printing at all. Trump's first term. Then again, we matched the cycle here, at least in dollar terms. In Federal Reserve terms, other central banks too, everybody was printing here. But then Bitcoin has been going up from here, and they've been normalizing. So I still don't think that you can find, some hot tips in. First of all, this is the most economically comparable money supply, is the monetary base. And we're just looking at the US right now. But you can't really find any hot tips from M1, M2, M3 versus Bitcoin. They're not comparable things. Bitcoin's been going up every month from here, and the Federal Reserve has been printing less and less money. It's just a fact. So that's why it's important to stick with this, stick with the power curve. 96% R squared can explain exactly what Bitcoin is doing from a supply-demand perspective. And then we just have to measure the relative risk. I got lots more good stuff coming, guys, but probably gonna leave it there. If you guys are interested in merch, please let me know. Any of the memes my guy can give for different stuff, whether it's my brand or not, generic Bitcoin stuff, Simpsons meme, old man yells at Bitcoin, a lot of good stuff. Still don't have it on my site, but just send me an email, info@porkopolis.io, info@porkopolis.io. We can set you up for the holiday season. And again, if you're new to this or new to the power curve, you can find all the data on my website, including the chart on log linear. And this is the key to a power curve: is the increase in the time to double is constant. It's proportionate. But it is not the time to double that is constant. That's exponential growth. So Bitcoin's doubling time basically changes here. And at the moment, we're doubling every 2 years. That's sort of the epoch that we're in, is 40% per annum or 2-year doubling. And you can see that here as well. So doubling time. You can look at the money supply stuff too. Have all the figures here. You can look at the physical currency, bank reserves, where the main nations stand. Bitcoin, we have stock market data as well. It's all there. So I think I'm going to leave it there, guys, today. If you got any spare sats, please send them my way. I'll keep putting the charts out for you, and hopefully some more interactive things to come next year. Early part of next year. But everything comes from my head, and I'm trying to sort it out still about the best way I want to present this stuff. But we'll get a lot more data to share. Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate it. Thank you for watching, as always. Thank you, Kurt. Thank you, Logi. Satoto. All right, guys. Have a great day. I will see you tomorrow. Bye.